بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه أما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters, today I'd like to share some reflections and thoughts on an episode in the story of Prophet Musa, may the peace and blessing of Allah be upon him. In a previous reminder, I shared with you the story of Musa was a righteous, knowledgeable man, commonly known as Al-Khidr. And from that story, we learned something important about Prophet Musa. First thing we learned how eager he was in terms of pursuing knowledge. When he came to know that there was somebody who was more knowledgeable than him, he took a long journey to meet him and to learn from him. Secondly, we learn from that episode in the story of Musa how humble Musa was. Even though he was higher in terms of ranks than Al-Khidr, he was fully willing to humbly learn from him and receive directions and guidance from him without any hesitation. Today we will look at another episode in the story of Musa where we can also see the unique qualities and characters of Prophet Musa that we can all learn from. In Surah Al-Qasas, the story of Musa and his people has been told in great detail. And the surah or the chapter tells us that Musa and his people, the Israelites, were under the tyranny of the Pharaoh of Egypt, Pharaoh. He was killing them, torturing them, enslaving them, and treating them like subhumans. The year Musa was born was a difficult year. And when his mother gave birth to him, she was worried that the soldiers of Pharaoh might abduct him and might kill him. So in a state of despair, she was inspired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put him in a basket and leave him in a river. The river took him all the way to the palace of Pharaoh. The wife of the Pharaoh took the child Musa. She loved him instantly, and she pleaded with Pharaoh to spare him, and she wanted to take him as their adopted son. So Musa grew in this palace under the protection of Pharaoh, living a life of comfort and luxury. But Musa from an early time was aware that he belonged to the Israelites. He had a sense of the pain and the agony and the sadness that his people were going through under the tyranny of Pharaoh. So when he became an adult, that sense of care and that sense of belonging to that persecuted community made him feel that he has a sense of duty towards them. And this was way before him becoming a prophet. So we are told in this chapter, in chapter of Al-Qasas, that Moses one time, as he was walking in Egypt, he saw a Coptic man an Egyptian Coptic, beating an Israelite. And this was normal because Israelites were treated worse than second-class citizens. Anybody can beat them, anybody can abuse them. So Musa saw this episode or this situation where this Israelite was unjustly being beaten by another Coptic Egyptian. So, and the man was pleading with Musa to help him. Musa intervened and he was able to rescue the man. So another similar incident happened and Musa also intervened. So now the Egyptians, Pharaoh and his soldiers started taking notice, that they came to realize that Musa was standing on the side of the Israelites and defending them and standing for them. And accordingly, he became a target. Musa was warned by other people that his safety was in danger. So he decided to leave Egypt. He left Egypt and went to a place known as Midian. So here, my dear brothers and sisters, we could ask and say, why did Musa leave Egypt? He was living in a palace. He had a comfortable life. And obviously we see the reason he was in trouble. The reason he left Egypt was because he has a sense of humanity, a sense of care, a sense of duty. He felt the pain of his people. And rather than saying, as long as I'm okay, I have no business or I care less, he took responsibility. And being a strong and able person, he came forward to defend a weak and persecuted person. So that tells us something about Prophet Musa, a man from young age who had a sense of empathy, care, a sense of justice, a high social conscience. And because of that, he left to Midian. So he arrived in Midian, and here the chapter tells us what happened as soon as he arrived in Midian. وَلَمَّا وَرَدَ مَاءَ مَدْيَنَ وَجَدَ عَلَيْهِ أُمَّةً مِّنَ النَّاسِ يَسْقُونَ. So as soon as he arrived in this place called Midian, he found a group of people gathering around the well with their herds, with their animals, to try to water them. Then he noticed there were two young women who were standing on the side, trying to hold back their animals. So Musa instantly noticed that there was something wrong here. All these men, strong men, pushing each other, trying to water their animals. And then these two young women on the side, holding back their animals, waiting for the men to finish and leave. And apparently this was a job, it's a tough job, a job that was done by men at that time. So Musa stood up and went to them, and he said to them, مَا خَطْبُكُمَا? What's wrong with you? What's the matter with you? What brought you here? So they said to him that we are waiting. لا نسقي حتى يصدر الرعاء وأبونا شيخ كبير. That we would not water our animals until these shepherds, until these men leave. And once they leave, we would water our animals. And they explained the reason why they are doing this. وَأَبُونَا شَيْخٌ كَبِيرٌ, that our father is an old man. So what does Musa do? He takes their animals, he waters them, and he returns them back to these two young women. So here, my dear brothers and sisters, let's pay an attention on this particular episode. The first question perhaps we might ask, why among those men there was no one who really cared about these two young women? Everybody was just occupied with their own self. It's a reflection of a me kind of society. Nobody thought of helping them. Nobody cared about them. Everybody want to take care of their animals and just leave. But Musa was different. Musa, his conscience was lively. He had a sense of duty. So he noticed this, something very abnormal. And he stood up and he went and he offered help. And he was indeed very helpful. So what drove Musa to do this is that sense of care and duty that sometimes in some societies does not exist. And the weak and the disadvantaged are often forgotten. Musa could have simply ignored this, and he could justify it. He could say, I'm new to this village. I don't know anybody. It's none of my business. I have other things to worry about it. Why do I have to do this? Why don't they do it? I mean, there are many justifications of avoiding or not doing the right thing. But that was not the character of Musa alayhi salam. And it's interesting that even though he was a refugee, and he had nothing, he did not ask for anything in exchange. And he was a young man. He did not look for any benefit or any advantage. He did not try to take advantage of the situation. He did it sincerely and purely for the sake of helping these two young women. So here, my dear brothers and sisters, we see how important to have this kind of character, a sense of care, sense of justice, standing up for the weak, the downtrodden, and the forgotten in society. And that's what exactly Musa did when he was in Egypt. And that's exactly what he is doing now when he came to Madian. My dear brothers and sisters, perhaps to illustrate the point, an incident happened many years ago in the city of New York. A woman was savagely beaten during the night. And the woman was shouting and crying and pleading for help and assistance. And this happened in a crowded neighborhood. And they say that the people in the neighborhood, they heard her shouting and her crying and her pleading for help. And everybody looked from the window. But not only no one came to rescue her, no one even called the police. Her shouting and her crying continued for a while until it quietened. In the morning, when the police were doing their rounds in the neighborhood, they found her body. And there was a great shock in the society as how this young woman, despite the fact that she was yelling and asking for help, and despite the fact the people in the neighborhood heard her cry, nobody came to rescue and to help her, and nobody even called the police. Some researchers, some sociologists, they were interested in this incident, and they interviewed the people in the neighborhood. Why no one cared even to call the police? And everybody gave the same answer. They said, well, we thought that someone else might have already called the police. Someone else maybe is doing something. Because when everybody looked from the window, they saw somebody also looking from the other side of the window. So everybody made the assumption somebody will help, somebody will take care of her, somebody will call the police. And nobody called. That kind of sentiment, my dear brothers and sisters, is detrimental to society. That's not what we learn from Musa. For Musa, when he sees something wrong, he doesn't wait for others to fix it. He feels that he has a sense of duty, a sense of responsibility. Doesn't wait to be told to do it. Doesn't try to find justification. Doesn't say why doesn't say let other people do it. He could have done that when he came to Madian. He could have said, let their people take care of them. I'm new to the city. Why should I care? That's not the sentiment of Musa. And that's not the character of Musa. And my dear brothers and sisters, as followers of Prophet Musa, and followers of all the great mighty of prophets, it's important that we have that sense of care and duty. Be people who come forward in promoting what's good and what's right. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in describing our ummah, our nation, our community of believers, He said, تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. You promote, you support, you enjoin what is right, what is correct, what is virtuous, and you prevent what is wrong and what is harmful. That's a spirit that we need to inculcate in ourselves, and that's the spirit that makes a society healthy and just and caring society. Thank you very much for listening to me. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.